Yay, I'm live. Okay, right, let's copy this and just do this. Just going to give it another minute or so. Hopefully you can hear me. Just move this forwards. You can really see my ugly mug. Right, I'm just going to give it one more minute and then I'm going to may have to put this on my lap. Hey, Lachlan's here! Yay! My other channel wouldn't let me stream, so that'll have to be on Friday. Oh, look, they're all coming. I can see the numbers going up. This is really good. Yay! Do you like my new t-shirt, Moo Moo Shrew? You won't get that reference unless you're an Adam Hatton viewer. Okay, I am going to start. Can you all... Wow, this is so weird. I really don't like virtual school. I much prefer to be in normal school. Yay! People are coming. I'm sorry it's on my normal channel. Google decided that on my new channel that I wasn't allowed to stream, so I've had to do it on my my personal channel, and then I've had to download Google. This is my new setup in my sister's salon, so I'm going to be very distracted by this. You'd prefer to see my ugly mug. You don't have an ugly mug. You just have to look at my ugly mug. Than online class. It's not that with online class, it's just a lot easier to do it this way in terms of teams because everybody like talks over each other. Hi, Sam. Okay, so Cold War stuff. I'm going to do like a little recap for you because I know I had a couple of questions before Easter, and I'm sorry I didn't really. Okay, I need to stop talking. I didn't really go online over Easter, other than to check my social media and just sort of took a step back because in this kind of weird world, I needed a bit of mental break. So I bought a ukulele. I've done all sorts. So we're now going to go back into teaching mode, and which is really weird when you've got a big cow on the front of you, but there you go. And now I'm going to teach you about the Cold War. Now, normally, play the ukulele, Lachlan. No, not yet. I'm not very good. When I get better, I'll play you my uke. So, with the Cold War, it's my personal favourite in terms of the course. It's loads of information. People are going, hey Triana, loads of people are, I say loads of people, USSR and the USSR are going at it with these different ideologies. So we start our course in 1943, yes, in the Tehran Conference. So we've got USA, USSR, hi Molly, fighting in World War II along with Great Britain. France has waved the white flag. Shocker. Oh, hi Charlotte. Sorry I didn't see you. Hi Charlotte. So we've got these two superpowers along with Britain fighting against the Nazis. Now they meet in Tehran in 1943. Now the relationship between the USA, the USSR and Great Britain is quite unique in that the Americans, FDR, is willing to work with the Soviets, we've got a long-standing relationship with America and the UK, so they don't really have to work with us. They know that we're going to join forces. So he's willing to work with the USSR and sort of tread very carefully with the USSR, kind of giving to Stalin's demands a little bit, whereas Stalin's quite suspicious, but kind of wants to see how far he can get in terms of what he can get out of the USA. Whereas Churchill is not so keen on Stalin. He's very suspicious. He doesn't like him. He is not falling for what Stalin is doing. He doesn't want to. Is not really interested in being friends with them. However, when it comes to the relationship between FDR, so Franklin Roosevelt, Joseph Stalin, and Churchill, they have this kind of mutual agreement in that they are willing to work with one another, put aside their differences in terms of the way they think, the capitalism versus the communism. And we've done that a couple of times. I'm hoping you guys know what that means, in that communism is that very extreme left view, capitalism is a right-wing view, loosely terms, kind of survival of the fittest, that kind of thing. Private businesses. They push all of that aside and they say, okay, we are not going to look at the differences and how we think, how we run our countries, all of that. We are going to look more into, we have a common enemy in Hitler and the Nazis. We need to defeat them, and then we will come back to our differences later, potentially, if at all. And Churchill particularly is the biggest in pushing that aside because he really doesn't like Stalin. You've got to keep that in mind. Now at Tehran, which is in Iran, ironically, they meet for the first time in 1943, in November, okay? And this is actually, there we go, the three leaders. So you've got Stalin here, Churchill here, and then in the middle you've got FDR. So that's them meeting in Tehran. Now at Tehran, it's sort of a symbolic meeting. You don't really get a lot out of it. And I'll be kind of honest with you. As an examiner for this particular exam, which is really weird saying when they're not happening this year, for this exam, to ask you about the Tehran conference solely on its own would be extremely harsh. Now, it's not to say Yes, they did sit down because Roosevelt had polio. Well done, Lochran. They will ask you potentially about Tehran, but it will be in conjunction or joining with Yalta and Potsdam. It won't be Tehran on its own. There isn't enough in Tehran for you to talk about in an 8-mark question. Now, you're probably thinking, Miss, we haven't looked at any of the questions from the Cold War yet. Well, I'm going to leave that for just a little bit. I want to give you a bit of context, and then we will do a lesson on how to answer these questions. Now, at Tehran, it was more about improving relations between the three. Like I said, uniting them under that umbrella of the Nazis as their common enemy. Now, it was mainly a success for Stalin, Tehran. All right. Now, Britain and the USA agreed to open up a second front in France in May 1944. Now, France did try and put up a fight against the Nazis, but were very unsuccessful. In fact, they got completely crushed. Blitzkrieg wiped them out, and there was a small resistance in the south. But on the whole, France had to wave the white flag and say, no, we can't put a fight up anymore. Britain, you're on your own. So the Nazis are advancing from the to the west from the east. And then they are also on a second front once they've got France, and they are basically at Britain's doorstep, because what you've got to remember is the Nazis did manage to get to the Channel Islands. Blitzkrieg through the Ardennes. Yes, go on, Lochran. They got to kind of the doorstep of Britain. They got on the Channel Islands, a place called Guernsey. I've been there. It's a really tiny, tiny island. They have a museum for the occupation, but that's as far as Hitler manages to get in terms of Britain. So he gets a little bit cocky and opens a second front up in Russia and starts a blitzkrieg mission in Russia to try and take Moscow. But it's not quite as straightforward because of the winter. And he gets stuck, Hitler does, in Russia. And the Russians do put a fight back, but Stalin does have a meltdown. Stalin goes, oh, I can't do this, and actually goes and hides in his holiday home. A little bit like what Gordon Ramsay's doing in coronavirus. Now, once Stalin's got over that, he agrees that he is going to wage war and starts fighting back against the Nazis. So when it comes to Tehran, Stalin says, right, well, I'm doing my part now. I'm fighting back against the Nazis. We're actually doing quite well. There's the Battle of Stalingrad, which we've managed to win. We are pushing them further and further west. They are not advancing east. So Britain, USA, what are you going to do to support me in the east fighting the Nazis in the west? Because you've kind of left them at France, and that's it. That's all you're doing. So Britain and America decide that, yes, by May 1944, they will advance into France and open up what we call a second front. Hitler was like an Auntie Elsa. The cold really bothered him. Yes, the cold really bothered him anyway. Love that, Shan. They're going to open up this second front in France in May 1944, which is really good for Russia. So the consequence of that is that the Nazis, because I know that Tegan and Caitlin were asking about this, about the results and the consequences. If Britain and America open a second front up in France, and you've got the Russians fighting in the east, so you've got west and east pushing together, okay, you've now basically got the Nazis trapped in an ally fight. And Hitler is not only having to fight the Russians, and is not doing very well, but he's also having to fight the Americans and British on another front. So you effectively open up two separate wars in one war, if that makes sense. So it's as two fronts. So the consequence is it stretches the Nazis. They make a German sandwich. Yes, they do. It stretches the Nazi resources and basically weakens them. That's a result. Hopefully, Tegan and Caitlin, that helps for one of the results. You've also then got the Soviets. She's just opening her PowerPoint and spinning a little bit, which is not great. They've also then got the Soviets agree that they are going to wage a war against Japan. Now, America have only come into the Second World War because of Pearl Harbor. They have been bombed by the Japanese. The Japanese have taken it as a opportunity that they are going to bomb America and they are going to get America involved. Whoever that is that says, sorry, I'm late, don't worry, the stream will be up. It's not a problem. Don't panic. It's all good in the hood. I don't know who you are from your username. Now, because of that, once the Soviet Union have managed to help defeat Germany, they'll open a second front in Japan. Now, that result or that consequence is that they then help America again, opening up a second front. Hey, Braden, opening up a second front on Japan. Again, then making like a Japanese sandwich, just as Lachlan said with the German sandwich. So it's helping America out effectively. So you can see how Stalin's feeling here. He's got what he wants in a second front in terms of France. And now he's getting seen as a strong power to help America. He's being seen as like an equal. So Stalin's doing really well here. And that's another consequence of opening a second front in Japan. Finally, they agree to set up a United Nations. Now, we know that the League of Nations from our Germany course was not really that successful because it didn't stop Hitler. Hitler was able to walk into the League of Nations and go, I don't want to do what you're going to do. Peace out, bros. See you later. And that meant that they weren't really that effective. So they agree that they are going to make a United Nations. You've probably heard of that in today's world because they have a lot to do with like the Syrian crisis. They've been helping, where else have they been helping? They've been helping a lot of places. They helped in the bushfires in Australia. So they help people that are in need. That's their job. Now, it is agreed they are going to set up this United Nations together. And there isn't going to be this like tier system of, well, normal United Nations people and higher United Nations people. There's no tier system because in the League of Nations, you were like a member or a founder. There's not going to be any of that. It's going to be a collective group together. Now, the result of that is that it's going to be able that the world are going to be able to talk to each other. They are going to be able to, yes, that's correct, Lachlan. There's no countries can make executive decisions, which is really good. Now we've got Donald Trump in America, since he wants to be king. Now, in terms of looking again, this is good for Stalin, is that they weren't really included in the League of Nations. They weren't really that bothered about the League of Nations, and it's much more a group effort. So they also agree, Stalin getting what he wants here, that a section of Eastern Poland is going to be absorbed into the Soviet Union to create sort of like a little buffer zone. And it's because Stalin's got this fascination with oh, okay. Something just popped up on my watch. I've got a staff meeting tomorrow. Anyway, they absorb a bit of Poland because Stalin's always been obsessed with Poland. He wants to absorb it. He wants that bit of land. He's got stuff against him. Stalin demanded for sea students because of getting out of them. Yes, but also he just wanted Poland because it's a nice bit of land, really, as you were. And they do agree. FDR is a little bit suspicious about it, but the person that's really hacked off about this is Churchill. Churchill's like, excuse me, the reason we got into this war is because we were trying to save Poland. I don't really want to give a bit of our Polish friends to you, Stalin, if I'm quite honest. I'm not going to do that. But FDR says, no, calm down. We'll agree this at a later date. I think this is something we could potentially work through. So Stalin comes out of the Tehran conference really well and actually then says, okay, right, I can work with these people. So 2 more years of the 2 more years of the war wages on, and it's becoming more and more obvious now in February of 1945 that Hitler is not doing very well. Side note, Hitler thinks he's still doing very well because he's employed people that go, yes, Hitler, no, Hitler, 3 bags full Hitler. Back to the Cold War. Now, it's becoming very obvious to the rest of the world that Hitler is going down. He is not going to win this war. And it is really important then that the Grand Alliance of the UK, the USSR, and the USA form together and create a proper alliance and start to decide what's going to happen to Germany post World War II. Now, they meet in a place called Yalta, which I believe is in Ukraine. If anybody wants to correct me, you may. That's also fine. Now, they meet in Yalta, and we've still got FDR, we've still got Churchill, we've still got Stalin. That's really important. I know I keep talking about the leaders, but it's really important that the Yalta and the Tehran conference, you know it's FDR, you know it's Churchill, and you know it's Stalin. It's really, really important. Thank you very much, Lachlan. Yes, getting it right. So Stalin realizes that he got away with a lot in the last meeting, and actually he could potentially ask for a little bit more. Now, they agree. I don't know why they have to agree again, but they renew their agreement that they are going to wage a second war in Japan. So Stalin says, yeah, I'm still agreeing to that. I said that last time. I said it 2 years ago. I'm not going back on my word. Once we get rid of these Nazi scum, I'll go and get the Japanese. Great. Perfect. Now, America and... well, that's a bit harsh, Braden. America and the UK have already launched their second front, so Stalin knows they're good for that. Now, what they do decide is that when Germany has been defeated, what you get is when a country's been defeated and you remove all its leaders, you have something called a power vacuum. Now, I'm telling you about this, guys, because you are extremely clever. And this would be something that would get you extra marks. Now, when you get a country that has been defeated in war and you've removed all the leader, like I said, it's a power vacuum. Now, a power vacuum is where a country can descend into complete chaos because you've got loads of different people fighting for leadership. And it sucks in like a Hoover, all good people, bad people, mixes them all together, and you end up throwing out potentially the rubbish as well as the good. I am very sure that you are clever. Definitely. So America, Britain, and Russia know that Germany are going to be this power vacuum because remember, Hitler is controlling everything centrally, and he's taken over lots and lots and lots and lots of different countries in Europe. And you're going to have this massive power vacuum. People are not going to be able to, they've not been able to run their own countries, some for the last 5 years. Germany, particularly since 1932, they have been like it for the last 14 years. 14 years. 1932 to 45, 14 years. 13 years. 13 years. Oh, Miss Martin is doing really well with maths. So the last 13 years, Nazi rule, it's all been very central. They don't really know what they should be doing. And America, Britain, and Russia plan for this. Sorry, Braden, maths is not my thing. So they agree that they are going to divide Germany into 4 zones. I love how you pulled your message back, Braden. So they divide Germany into 4 zones. So the eastern section of Germany is going to Russia, obviously because it's closest. Then at the bottom, you've got America because you can't really pull a bit of Germany and say, oh, I'll give you the closest bit to America because America is like thousands of miles away. Then you got France kind of get like the middly bit. and Britain get the top bit. Now, so they've got 4 zones, but they also recognise in the Eastern Zone, there's Berlin. Now, Berlin, I can do geography, is it's the capital city of Germany, and therefore it is like the flagship city. If you notice, whenever someone invades a country, they always try to get to the capital. So when Hitler invaded Russia, he was trying to get to Moscow. When Hitler was trying to invade Britain, he was trying to get to London. If you are going to attack a country, you want to go for the capital city, because that's usually where all your diplomats are, your most important people, your financial sector. So if London was to go under, if we were invaded, we would be screwed. So they realised quite quickly, America and Britain, that the section that they've given to the USSR has Berlin in it, and that can't happen. That's not okay. They can't. The Russians cannot control Berlin because they'll feel like they've won. So they decide that they're going to divide Berlin into 4 as well. Now, the result of that, the result of dividing Germany and Berlin into 4 is that you've got 2 opposing ways of life immediately next to each other. Furthermore, in Berlin itself, you have got a capitalist utopia, like the perfect version of capitalism. Excuse me, I just burped, that's so gross. In the middle of a sea of communism, which could potentially have serious consequences. Now, it's going to cause tension. It is going to cause tension. That's a quite obvious result of, sorry, Braden, of of dividing Germany into 4. They agree that they're going to hunt down, at least spell disgusting, right? They are going to hunt down Nazi criminals and put them on trial. That's quite an easy one that they all agree to. And they also agree that they are going to allow countries that have been liberated, so freed from German rule, to have elections, free elections, vote for who they want. Now, you can imagine Stalin's not quite so keen on that idea. Having a free election means that he might not get the people that he wants into power. He might not get people that are his friends, his mates, his allies in control of those particular countries. So that becomes a bit of contention, and actually it is something that then becomes a bigger issue. They also say that they are going to set up the United Nations again, but they agree that the eastern side of Europe, closest to Russia, so from that East Germany, east, is going to be what we call a sphere of influence for Russia, meaning that Russia won't directly control them, i.e. it won't be Stalin going in and being a dictator, but they will be under the how do I put it? They will be kind of under the ideology of Russia, meaning that they will follow a similar, if not the same, ideas that Russia will, meaning that they effectively allow Russia to control Eastern Europe, which Churchill is not particularly happy about. But FDR says, look, we haven't actually finished off the Nazis yet. Let's focus on that. Let's focus on what is going on at the present, and we'll finish it after the war. Because Stalin then pipes up and says, hang on a second, I've got one more little thing that I'd like. I would personally like a lot of reparations after this from Germany. I want to crush them. And FDR and Churchill say, that's not going to happen. That got us into this mess. Let's pause that thought and go on to the next conference. We'll defeat the Nazis and decide what happens later. It's a little bit of procrastination. Right. final conference. Oh my God, I just done that for the whole internet. Nice. Yes, he does pull a World War I France. This chair is like, woo. Okay, Potsdam. Now, she says getting a textbook out. Here is a photo of Potsdam, and the biggest change that you will see is that Stalin is still there, so that's not a change, Ms. Martin. But Churchill has gone, and so has FDR, and they've been replaced by a guy called Clement Attlee and a guy called Truman. Now, why are they there? You'll see. FDR had polio, as we know. That's why he was in a wheelchair. That's why a lot of his, he's sleeping in a forever box. Ouch. That is why he is sat down in all of his photos. Now, between February and I really want to say July, and I'm correct, between February and July, Franklin Roosevelt dies. Now, when a president dies, unlike what has been happening in this country, I'm not saying that Boris Johnson died, can I just say. When Boris Johnson got really ill, he had to appoint someone to kind of take over and deputise for him. Well, in America, they have a vice president ready and waiting, and their whole job basically is waiting for a president to die. So the guy called Mike Pence, that is in America just now, he was vice president to Trump. His basic job is just waiting to see if Donald Trump dies, ready to get to take over. Not the best job. Well, that does happen for Roosevelt. Roosevelt gets really sick and ends up dying. And Truman then takes over and becomes president. And he actually wins an election. So, yes, Shan, he is. When Truman goes to the conference in Potsdam, he is very different to Roosevelt. He is extremely suspicious of Stalin. He is not willing to compensate and cooperate really with Stalin. It's a kind of my way or the highway. Why are these yawns all coming at once? I slept really well. And he has a real suspicion of Stalin. Now, Churchill actually does go to the Potsdam Conference. He arrives on the first day. He starts to sit down. He thinks, oh, all right, this bloke here, it might be a bit more on my wavelength rather than Roosevelt. And we might now be able to sort of get Stalin when we want him. But Churchill makes a mistake that he has come back and he's come to this meeting in the middle of an election. Now, at home in Britain, this election goes on and people were quite worried about Churchill. Now, they were worried about he was going to keep them in a warlike state. They were worried that he was going to how do I put it? He was going to keep them in a very aggressive front like they had been in World War II, which was not what people wanted. They just had World War I. They'd now had World War II in a very kind of short period of time. Yes, I'm well aware that I said just World War I, but you know what I mean. They'd had World War I and World War II within a very short space of time. People were done with war. People were over it. People just didn't want any more war. They wanted peace. They wanted real calm, lowering down of tensions. And they didn't feel that Churchill was the man to do that. So they elected a guy called Clement Attlee. Now, Clement Attlee is the reason that we have the NHS. He is the man that created the NHS, and he is the reason that we are doing okay in this crisis, or the NHS is doing okay in this crisis. So this is my photography channel. Great. It's not time for World War III, Lochran. No. We technically are in a World War III against COVID-19. Now, when Attlee arrives at the conference, he makes it very clear, I don't really want to be here. I have no real interest in being here. Oh my God. I'm more interested in what's going on in Britain. I need to sort Britain out. Britain's economy is ruined from World War II. We have got more pressing issues in that we have an empire that we can no longer pay for. I've got a lot of men who have come back from the front injured, and a lot of women that have helped out that have come back with, potential mental health problems and injuries. I need to set up a system that looks after my people. So you argue it out between yourselves, and I'll just sit here. Whereas Stalin is like, right, America and Britain pretty much agreed to what I wanted in Tehran. We didn't do too much in Yalta. I didn't get completely shot down. So fresh blood, let's go. And that is a real issue. Thanks, Moo Shiroo. That's a real issue. Now, I have bought a better whiteboard than the one that I've got here because this one's rubbish. Look at me. Oh. Right. This is where things start to get a little bit messy. Oh, did I not bring my blue pen up? Oh, well. Sorry, gang. So, at the end of World War II, there is a race to Berlin, and the Russians get there first, which does annoy the Americans. Now, they occupy places like bear with me 2 seconds. I'll just give you 5. So it's going to be flipped round. Okay, we won't bother with that. I'll have to think that one through. I will think about that one. So they occupy places like Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, Bulgaria, Poland. I'm putting my cow away now. I'm very self-conscious about my little cow. So they have the Red Army station there. You could read that. Could you read that? Is it not backwards to you? Is it just backwards to me? Oh, okay. Sweet. Perfect. So they occupy places like this. Now, the Red Army is in... It wasn't flipped, you dummy. I'm sorry, I'm new to this. They occupy places like this, and the Red Army stay there. Now, they were asked to leave. Their job was to go in, liberate them from the Nazis, and then leave. But they don't. They stick around. And they are quite horrible to the people, okay? They go and loot different places, so shops, businesses. They go and end up raping a lot of women. They would used to beat up men and steal their watches, and a lot of the Russians would wear lots of watches up their arms and in their pockets and keep them on them as trophies, which America were really quite annoyed about. Like I said, Britain have got no interest in this point. Britain are being very quite self-centered at this point. Now, the Russian army is the biggest army in the world. The biggest army in the world at this point. And even though the rest of the world were saying, okay, we're going to demilitarize, we're going to, calm things down, Stalin says, no, I'm not. I'm leaving my troops where they are, and actually makes it even bigger. And he sets up Argyle, I don't need you right now. He sets up a government in Poland. Problem is, it's not a free election. It's a communist government and totally ignores what was discussed at Yalta and does what he wants. And then, where am I? Oh, yeah. In secret, America have been developing a new weapon. So it's not widely known that in Germany, the Nazis were actually starting to try and develop nuclear warheads. So when the war is over, America and the USSR scramble, okay, to find who can get these scientists. And it's a case of, right, I'll take you. And America end up getting these scientists and they start developing what we now know as the atomic bomb. And on the 16th of July, prior, that is really important, prior to the Potsdam Conference, America explodes and tests its first atomic bomb. Now, the agreement was with the Grand Alliance that they were going to talk to each other. They were going to tell each other everything. They were going to be like best friends forever. But Truman, suspicious of Stalin before he even gets to the conference, explodes the bomb, tells Britain, and is like, right, I'll let him know at the conference. Now, this infuriates Stalin, that when he arrives at the conference and Truman says to him, hey, so I know I was meant to tell you this a little bit beforehand, but you know, I haven't. So I've exploded a bomb and it could just wipe everybody out, really. Hope you're cool, mate. And Stalin goes nuts, absolutely nuts. He's like, right, I need to get my own atomic bomb as soon as possible. I need to break my defenses up. I can't trust these people. And it totally puts his guard up. He started to let his guard down with the Americans, with the British under Roosevelt and Churchill. But now walls up and Stalin has gone into complete defensive mode. Now, the agreements at this particular conference is that they agree, I don't know why they have to agree again, but they agree to divide Germany into 4 and Berlin into 4. They also said that they are going to initially demilitarize Germany, so they're going to get rid of Germany's army. But unlike the Treaty of Versailles, Germany won't be vulnerable because America, Britain, France, when they get in on it, and Russia will use their armies to protect them. Okay, so they agree on that. They agree that democracy is going to be re-established in Germany, including free elections, free press, and freedom of speech. They agree that, in theory. They also agree, or come up with a compromise for Stalin. They say, right, I get that you wanted some reparations. I get that. But you are not having money like what happened in the Treaty of Versailles. And Truman's very in tune to that. Truman says, no. We're not repeating the Treaty of Versailles again because that got us into this mess and we had a Hitler. I don't want a Hitler 2.0. So you can have reparations, but they are going to be in the form of industrial goods. So any industrial goods made in the West would be given to Russia, because Russia did the amount of atoms is the amount that Mrs. said agreed. I know, I'm sorry. They did say to that the Russians were worst affected, and they were. The Russians were really quite heavily effective in. They were heavily affected by World War II. So they say that they are going to have reparations, but it's not in monetary form, it's in things, it's in equipment. And in terms of their development. So this was a really good thing. Stalin had done wonders for Russia in his 5-year plans and had accelerated Russia 100 years in about 10 years. But they were still lagging behind. And that's not me being awful, it's fact. Now, in return for these goods, the West did request some coal and a little bit of food from the Soviet zone to kind of counteract it, but not in them, yes, starvation indeed, not in like equal amounts. So it wasn't a case of like when you go to a shop and you pay so much money and you get that amount worth, like in a pick a mix or in one of those health food shops. It was a case of the West would give so much and it would be a big proportion and they would get a smaller proportion in return. But that was how the reparations worked. The Nazi Party was banned, Nazis were removed, and they were put in Nuremberg trials in 1946. Every single country had full participation into the United Nations. Pick a mix is a rip-off, indeed. And Poland's frontier, so effectively Poland's borders were shifted and moved to the west. And these two rivers, Oder and Neisse, I think you say it, I'm not sure, but these two rivers were given to Stalin. Now, the thing that they disagreed on, things that were not particularly well received, were the reparations by Stalin because he wanted to crush Germany, but also the fact of free elections. Now, in a capitalist society, so like in Britain, because America's a rubbish example, in Britain, when you go to, sorry, I know I'm going on. I just want to give a comprehensive view for you. In Britain, when you go to vote, there are several parties there. There's usually Labour, Conservative, Lib Dems, Green Party. You can also have the Liberal Party, Independent People. I know there is the Monster Raving Loony Party, Brexit Party, all of those. There are loads of different political parties that are then on the ballot paper. And you can vote for whichever party you want to, or the person you want to, and it is totally free. It's done secretly. No one judges you for your vote if you don't tell them, and it's done that way. Whereas, whereas Stalin, it was lots of different candidates, but they were all communist. So that's a very different way of electing someone. So you've either got, in the capitalist society, you've got lots of different people with lots of different ideas, and you vote for the one that you agree with most. Or in a communist party election, and I'll keep saying the word party, you've got lots of different candidates, but they all believe the same thing. Which, in our view, from our point of, or our perspective, that's not a free election. But in the Soviet Union, that was seen as a free election. And this became a real source of tension between Truman and Stalin. And they actually have a massive falling out about it. And this inspires, Truman's new way of thinking. Because Stalin turns around and says to Truman, I will not bow down to your pressure. I will not... Oh, thank you very much. It's my sister's chair. It's not mine. I will not bow down to what you want. I'm leaving my troops where they are. I'm running my elections how I want. I am doing what I want, when I want, how I want, and you will not interfere with it. Go on, sassy Stalin. And Truman then says, actually, do you know what? I'm going to get tough on you. I'm not dealing with this. And this then breaks the Grand Alliance apart. That is it. That's the end of the Grand Alliance. They are not together anymore. They are not working together. It then goes into, as Lachlan rightly says, the Truman Doctrine and the Cold War. But what you've got to just see is that this is the map of Europe by the end of 1945. So you've got, let me see. Can you see? Oh, I'll try. This is the Soviet zone, British zone, American zone, and French zone of Germany. So up until this point, everything this side belongs to the Soviets. The Soviets control that, and you've got a real split in Europe. You've got Western Europe, and then you've got Oh, that's Mrs. Goy. And then you've got Eastern Europe, okay? So you've got that the two different sides, and that's how the Soviets have expanded and stayed in Europe. Now, your lesson for today is a quiz. Everything I've just gone over up until that point is what you can do on the assignment that I've put on to Teams. Now, it's a 20 question quiz. You are more than welcome to use the internet, use this lecture, use me, give me a little email, however you want to do it. Use the pages that I put on to Teams last week to complete those questions. Then I've got a little bit more for you to do in terms of 2 telegrams, which are really important. Now, these haven't come up at all yet. Again, it would be really harsh for them to come up, but you do need to know about them. And it's the long telegram and the Novikov. Novikov telegram. Now, I'll tell you about those in the last 10 minutes of this stream, and then you can use the assignment that I've put on, which is effectively reading the 2 telegrams and picking some things out from it. So what you've got to do, she says, is she's just going to pull a PowerPoint up so that she doesn't give you the wrong thing, is that I've put on there this 20 questions for you about what we've talked about in the origins of the war. Then I've got a little clip for you on Soviet expansion on slide 3. Slide 4 gives you some little keywords. Slide 5 talks about how Stalin was feeling. Why was Stalin feeling like he wanted a buffer zone? Thinking about how he's been invaded the last few years, okay? So Stalin, remember, has been invaded a couple of times in World War I and World War II. He's not happy about it. Why is he going to want a buffer zone? And also, why is Truman going to be so worried about Stalin's demands? And why is he going to want... so we talked about the Treaty of Versailles. Then you've got about a little... Slide 6 is just a little bit of... just a recap for you. Then on slide 7, you have got a picture of the textbook, which is this bit here. Show you these 2 sources here of the 2 different telegrams. There's a much better picture. And what I'd like you to do is pick out 3 warnings that the guy called George Kennan, who writes the long telegram in 1946, gives to Truman about Russia. There's no real science to it. In terms of, you don't need to go too deep into it. You really need to pick out things that you can see. Go for the obvious, okay? So George Kennan writes, it is clear that the United States cannot expect in the foreseeable future to be close to Soviet regimes. It must continue to regard the Soviet Union as a rival, not a partner in the political arena. Okay, that's the first thing you can talk about, is that there is going to be a rivalry there, okay? Don't go too in depth. Don't go too deep into it. It's plain simple. I want 3 warnings that Kennan comes from this particular telegram. And what then might the impact be of this telegram? So thinking about how might this telegram from George Kennan, who is an official for the US based in Moscow, how might that impact, how might that affect the relationship between the USA and the USSR? How might that influence Truman in his policies? So think about those things. That's what I'm talking about with the impact. Also, then you've got the Novikov telegram. Now, the Novikov starts off with obvious indications of the US effort to establish world dominance are also to be found in the increase in military potential in peacetime and in the establishment of a large number of naval and air bases, both in the United States and beyond its borders. So when it says that, you're picking out 2 things that Novikov warns Stalin about. Well, he's warning about how the fact that the Americans have told the USSR to, hey, you need to decrease your Red Army, but on the sly are increasing their military, their navy, their air bases. Hold on a cotton picking second. You've told Russia to get rid of their army, but you're increasing yours. There's a potential warning there. What's saying to Stalin? Hang on, they're saying one thing, but they mean the other. Okay. So 2 things from the telegram that you can find about the warnings from each side to their leader, okay? So 2 for Novikov, 3 for Kennan. Now, when you get to Novikov, again, I want to know what the impact might be. How might Novikov's telegram affect, impact, influence Stalin's different policies? Hopefully that is not too taxing. So you've got until Friday to complete that work. I know that it must be really difficult for you guys at the moment in terms of doing work at home. I know that since I've done nothing for the Easter break, motivation has been lacking, but I'm getting there, all right? So use this live stream, which I will end and save to my YouTube channel and put the link into Teams. I am just at the end of my phone as Teams is on my phone. After kind of 4:30, 5 o'clock, I will be shutting it down and playing my ukulele and just kind of doing things. But otherwise, I'm here if you need me. Give me a shout. If you could send me your work, either submitting it through Teams or sending it me through the chat function, or send it me via email, I don't mind. I'll save it. Hopefully, Tegan and Caitlin, I've answered the questions in the stream for you. Don't worry, Shan, you've got a couple of days to do it. I'm not in a rush. I recognise it's a lot. So just complete the 20 questions and then the terms of the 2 telegrams. And I will do another stream on my actual new proper channel on Friday, all about the Truman Doctrine. All right. Anything you need, you just need to say, I'm here for you, whether it's work or whether it's you need something else. Give me a Do you want me to go? I will do a uke song when I've learnt all the chords. Right, have a good day. Stay safe. Oh my gosh. Right, one sec. Bear with me, it's in my room. There you go. There's my uke. It's not in tune because I haven't tuned it today. But I can only play. Oh, that's gross. I can only play like Mary Had a Little Lamb on it. I've only had it since Friday. It's not in tune. You play Happy Birthday as well. Hold on. Oh, it's so not in tune. It's so not in tune. Right, I will practice my ukulele, but I'm going to do some work first. If you need anything, give me a shout. Be safe, stay indoors, only do your exercise when you're meant to. Right, go on with work. Bye.